Welcome to Friday Reads, where we help you find your next read. I'm Jill.
And I'm Julie, and this week we are looking at books written by Wisconsin authors, or authors who at least spent some portion of their life in Wisconsin.
And remember, you can get any of these books from the library using our curbside service. Just log into your account at infosoup.org and put the title on hold. And once you get that notification that your book is here, you can just come to the library anytime during our regular operating hours and call us from the parking lot and we'll bring it out to you. No appointment is necessary.
Okay, so I will kick it off with my first book today, and it is a classic by Edna Ferber, and it's the Book Cimarron. You know that it was made into a movie also. So you may know a little bit about Edna Ferber. She moved to Appleton actually at the age of 12. She graduated from high school in Appleton and she briefly attended Lawrence University. She is a Pulitzer Prize winning author for her novels So Big, Showboat, Giant, and Ice Palace. But today I chose her classic Cimarron, which we actually could have done last week as a Western. But this is the story of the Oklahoma land rush and traces the stunning challenges of settling an untamed frontier. Staking claim to their new home, Yancey, a spellbinding criminal lawyer, and his wife, the well-bred Sabra, work against overwhelming odds to create a prosperous life for themselves. As they establish themselves in this new land, Sabra displays a brilliant business sense and makes a success of the local newspaper, the Oklahoma Wigwam. In a similar true story, unable to afford college here in Appleton and wanting to help her family financially, Edna Ferber actually worked at the Appleton Daily Crescent as the newspaper's first female reporter. And she loved that work so much, she eventually moved on to a bigger market in the Milwaukee Journal. This book, Cimarron, was originally published in 1929 and was twice made into a motion picture. The 1931 version won the Best Picture Award. It brings history alive, capturing the settling of the American West in vivid detail.
She's got a school named after her in Appleton.
Yes, she does. She has the school named after her.
My choice is The Dog Year. This is by Anne Garvin. In this book, Dr. Lucy Pierman was not built for a messy life. A well-respected surgeon whose patients rely on her warmth, compassion, and fierce support, Lucy has always worked hard and trusted the system. She's not the sort of person who ends up in a 12-step program after being caught stealing supplies from her hospital. But that was Lucy before the accident, before her husband and unborn baby were ripped away from her in an instant, before her future felt like a broken promise. Caught red-handed in a senseless act that kept her demons at bay, she was faced with a choice to get some help or lose her medical license. Now she's reluctantly sharing her deepest fears with a bunch of strangers, avoiding her loneliness by befriending a troubled girl, pinning her hopes on her husband's last gift, and getting involved in a rugged cop from her past. It's only when she is adopted by a stray mutt and moves her group to the dog park that she begins to truly bond with the ragtag dog-loving addicts and discovers that a chaotic, unplanned life might be the sweetest of all. Dogs solve everything, don't they? Anne Garvin is a professor emeritus of health psychology at the University of Wisconsin. She teaches writing in the University of Wisconsin-Madison Continuing Education and Drexel University Masters of Fine Arts programs. She's also the founder of the Tall Poppy Writers, the only scaled, author-driven marketing cooperative in the U.S. that is exclusively for female authors of all genres. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I think I've seen her at the book festival. So
Awesome. My second pick today is actually in the children's department here at the library, and it is The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. Ellen Raskin was born in Milwaukee, grew up in the Great Depression, and was a children's illustrator and then an author. This was published in 1978 and won the Newbery Medal for American Children's Literature. It's a mystery, and in this mystery, the 16 nieces and nephews to Sam Westing's fortune are brought together in order to solve a puzzle, which is in the form of his will. The heirs, who have assembled in Sunset Towers, an apartment which is in view of Westing's big mansion, are organized into pairs and provided with money and a series of clues. The prize for winning is $200 million and ownership of Westing's business. No one knows why the eccentric, game-loving millionaire has chosen a virtual stranger and a possible murderer to inherit his vast fortune, but one thing is for sure: Sam Westing may be dead, but that won't stop him from playing one last game. I also grabbed a second book in the children's department, which is familiar to everybody. This is a book by Laura Ingalls Wilder, Pepin, Wisconsin. It says it's the birthplace of this author who spent her childhood on the move. She was in Pepin, they moved away and they came back. There's actually a museum in Pepin dedicated to her. And during her time in Wisconsin, she wrote her first book, Little House in the Big Woods. It's supposed to be based on her time here in Wisconsin, but she's got a whole series of books, which I'm sure people are very familiar with, the Little House on the Prairie books.
But you might not have known she's from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
My next pick is The Art of Fielding by Chad Harbeck. The author of this book, Chad Harbeck, grew up in Wisconsin, and he uses the state as a setting for this book, so that's super fun. Although it's not a real college and it's not a real town in Wisconsin, but it's still in Wisconsin. So, in this story, at Westis College, a small school on the shore of Lake Michigan, baseball star Henry Scrimshander seems destined for the big league stardom. But when his routine goes disastrously off course, the fates of 5 people are upended. Henry's fight against self-doubt threatens to ruin his future. College president Gert Affenlight, a longtime bachelor, has fallen unexpectedly and helplessly in love. Owen Dunn, Henry's gay roommate and teammate, becomes caught up in a dangerous affair. Mike Schwartz, the Harpooners team captain and Henry's best friend, realizes he has guided Henry's career at the expense of his own. And Pella Affenlight, Gert's daughter, returns to Westish after escaping an ill-fated marriage, determined to start a new life. As the season counts down to its climactic final game, these 5 are forced to confront their deepest hopes, anxieties, and secrets. In the process, they forge new bonds and help one another find their true paths. Written with boundless intelligence and filled with tenderness of youth, The Art of Fielding is an expansive, warm-hearted novel about ambition and its limits, and family and friendship and love and a commitment to oneself and others. So, I had a lot of baseball in this and like toward affairs.
Oh, gee. Did you read this one?
Yes,
Oh,
I did enjoy it.
Okay. My third pick for today is by Michael Perry and the book From the Top, Brief Transmissions from 10 Show Radio, which transmits from Big Top, Chautauqua up in Lake Superior. I've been a fan of Michael Perry's for many years. Have his coffee mug. Never stand behind a sneezing cow. I've seen him speak at many of our local book festivals. You may be familiar with some of his books, Population 485, Truck, Coop, Visiting Tom. I think his latest book is Peaceful Persistence. But this book, if you want to check out this author, is filled with short essays about fatherhood, snickering chickens, dangerous wedding rings, why you should have bacon in your stock portfolio, loggers and clogs, dumpster therapy, and everything in between. Michael Perry has a rare ability to touch both your funny bone and your heart. He was raised on a small Midwestern dairy farm, put himself through nursing school up at UW Eau Claire, while working on a ranch in Wyoming, and then he detoured back into writing. He lives in northern Wisconsin with his wife and 2 daughters out in the rural boondocks, where he serves on the local volunteer fire and rescue service and has a handful of chickens. So if you're looking for some humor in these crazy times, you might enjoy some of his short stories in this book, From the Top, Brief Transmissions from 10 Show Radio.
I read a couple of stuff.
Yeah, I have 2.
So this author was a suggestion from one of you. It's Victoria Houston. She is a Wisconsin author. In her teens and 20s, she couldn't wait to leave her small Wisconsin town. She not only returned to her hometown of Rhinelander, but she has based her popular Mr. series on the region's fishing culture. So Dead Big Dog, this is the 19th and the latest installment in the Loon Lake series that has been described as Murder, She Wrote meets Fargo. In this one, when the bodies of the wealthy Chicago industrialist and his wife are discovered in their summer home at the same time that a local lawyer disappears, life becomes complicated for Loon Lake Chief of Police Lou Ferris. Relying on the forensic dental expertise of her close friend and acting coroner, Doc Osborne, Lou soon finds the investigations are even more complicated than she thought when a rarely used computer belonging to a local sawmill operation is taken over by foreign hackers. Add to that the family issues facing both Lou and Doc, and this Northwoods summer becomes hot and dangerous. So
sounds intriguing.
Yeah, if you want some mystery in the Northwoods.
My 4th pick today, this is going to be a little glary, I think, on the cover, is a Jack Finney book, Time and Again. Walter Braden, which went by Jack Finney, was an American author who was born in Milwaukee. His best-known works are science fiction and thrillers, including The Body Snatchers, which was the basis for the 1956 Invasion of the Body Snatchers and its remakes. So in this book, we have science fiction, mystery, a passionate love story, and a detailed history of old New York, blending together in this spellbinding story of a young man enlisted in a secret government experiment. Transported from mid-20th century to New York City in the year 1882, Cy Morley walks the fashionable Ladies' Mile of Broadway, is enchanted by the jingling sleigh bells in Central Park, and solves a 20th century mystery by discovering its 19th century roots. Falling in love with a beautiful young woman, he ultimately finds himself forced to choose between his lives in the present and the past. A story that will remain in your memory time and again is a remarkable blending of the troubled present and a nostalgic past, made vivid and extraordinarily moving by the images of a time that was and perhaps still is. So if a book like this sounds intriguing, you may also like Cassandra York's Merry Everything, or Richard Matheson's Somewhere in Time, which is probably very familiar to people, especially with the movie that was made from that one.
So my next pick, I was kind of surprised because I knew about this author, but I didn't know she was from Wisconsin. Jennifer Chiaverini? I don't know how you say her name, but she lives in Madison, Wisconsin, and she's a New York Times best-selling author who is most well known for her Elm Street quilt series. You might have seen those. There's a bunch of quilts, books, and quilt patterns that are inspired by her books. She also wrote this historical fiction, Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker, which I think that might be when she won an award. This is her newest one, The Resistance Woman. And it's written by a Wisconsin author, and it's based on a true story of someone from Wisconsin. So it's super cool. After Wisconsin graduate student Mildred Fish marries brilliant German economist Arvid Harnack, she accompanies him to his German homeland where a promising future awaits. In the thriving intellectual culture of the 1930s Berlin, the newlyweds create a rich new life filled with love, friendships, and rewarding work. But the rise of malevolent new political faction changes their fate. As Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party wield violence and lies and seize power, Mildred, Arvid, and their friends resolve to resist. Mildred gathers intelligence from her American contacts, including Martha Dodd, the vivacious and very modern daughter of the U.S. ambassador, her German friends, aspiring author Greta Kuckhoff, and literature student Sarah Witz, risk their lives to collect information from the journalists, military officers, and officials within the highest level of Nazi regime. For years, Mildred's network stealthily fights to bring down the Third Reich from within. And when Nazi radio operatives detect an errant Russian signal, the Harnack resistance cell is exposed with fatal consequences. Inspired by actual events, Resistance Woman is an enthralling, unforgettable story of ordinary people determined to resist the rise of evil, sacrificing their own lives and liberty to fight injustice and defend the oppressed. So, Resistance Women.
I have a couple of her books on my wish list of books to read. I have not read her, though.
Yeah, I feel like I read Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker, but I might have forgotten.
Okay, and I have my next pick is The Curiosities by Susan Gloss. She is an attorney, novelist, and lover of vintage art and clothing. She lives in Madison, Wisconsin with her family. I have not read this one yet. I did read her book, Vintage, an engaging story that captured women's friendship and love. But in today's book, The Curiosities, Nell Parker has a PhD in art history, a loving husband named Josh, and a craftsman bungalow in Madison. But her last pregnancy ended later in the second trimester, and rather than pausing to grieve, she pushes harder for testing and fertility treatments. Urging Nell to apply for jobs, Josh believes his wife needs something else to focus on other than that baby that may never be. Finding a job turns out to be difficult for an art historian until Nell sees the ad seeking a director for a new nonprofit called the Mansion Hill Artist Colony. The colony is the brainchild of the late unconventional society dame Betsy Barrett, who left behind her vast fortune and a killer collection of modern art to establish an artist in residency program. The executor of Betsy's estate simply hands Nell a set of house keys and wishes her good luck. She dives into the new role and discovers that while finding artists to fill the 3 residency slots is easy, managing their eccentric personalities is not as easy. Despite all the drama, Nell finds a family among the members of the creative community that she's brought together, and when her attraction to one of the artists begins to heat up, Nell is forced to decide what will bring her the greatest joy: the creative inspired world she's created, or the familiar but increasingly fragile one of her marriage. So, The Curiosities.
So I could not bring up like Wisconsin authors without talking about the famous Jerry Apps. If you don't know about him, he goes to all the book festivals and things like that, and he writes about Wisconsin, like all the different things about Wisconsin and kind of like history stuff about Wisconsin. This one is called Rural Wisdom, Time-Honored Values of the Midwest. And really the whole book is about, you know, like wisdom from living in the Midwest. Like appreciate a warm floor to put your feet on when the temperature outside is below 0. And avoid looking at things as other people say you should see them. You are entitled to your own point of view. So, yeah, so like some wisdom that he must have heard from the Midwest living here, and I like him a lot. He has a ton of books too, so, and you can find him in the Wisconsin section if you come, when you are able to come to the library. Someday.
Okay, and I have a bonus book today. So my last pick for today is Divided Moon by Jill Vandening, who is sitting right next to me. Jill grew up in Kaukauna, and now she lives right here in Kimberly. So Jill has many talents, including being a master gardener and a writer. So I have her book, which was published in 2012, right?
2012.
So
out of print, so you got to read it at the library.
There
now.
you go. So Moon, Papa said, it is time for you to marry. Those aren't the words she expected to hear on the way home from her first high school dance. At 14 years old, Moon Vang should not be planning her wedding. She should be worrying about what's going on in school and her next algebra test. Outside her front door, Moon is like every other freshman, going to the mall, giggling about boys. But inside her home, she is the daughter of Hmong war refugees, bound by family traditions formed in Laos, a land she's never known. Now Papa tells her she has to marry a man she hasn't met. So how can Moon choose a path divided between two very different cultures without losing her friends, her family, or herself? I read this book when I first met Jill and started working with her, and I loved it. Jill also wrote a second book called Gangbanger. This one was published in 2016. We have both of these in the library. This book also deals with Hmong traditions and the choices one makes between friendship and honor.
Yeah. It's her brother.
It's her brother. So kudos to you, Jill, for being a
Thank
published
you.
author.
Thank you. Well, thanks for watching, and we hope you got some ideas for your next read, especially mine, because, you know, if you check it out, it won't get tossed from
From the collection. If you have a favorite Wisconsin author, please leave a comment on our feed. We love hearing from you. So happy reading and enjoy the beautiful day.
Bye.
See you next time.